Are we live now?
Not quite.
Oh, sorry, I thought somebody said yes.
Can I remind everyone to turn their mics off unless they're speaking?
Hey, you're live.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can I have approval for the May 17th, 2021 agenda? Moved by Sherry, second by Doug. Any additions or anything to the agenda? Sherry, do you have something?
Yeah, I'd like to move to add a closed session agenda item regarding information about easily identifiable individuals.
Okay. Now, Brian, can we do that at tonight's meeting, or do we have to go into another? I can't hear you, Brian.
Sorry about that, Your Worship. Yeah, so if we're going to have a closed session meeting, we would have to have that as a separate link following this meeting. So typically we'd go into closed session and come out and report. That information would have to be reserved for another council meeting for the actual report portion, but any sort of direction, et cetera, that's granted could be done so in that closed session meeting.
Okay, so just to help me out here, I'm going to go through the whole meeting, adjourn and everything, and then we go into the close. Is that right?
That's correct. The treasurer would send a separate link out to council members, and they could access that link for the closed session portion.
Okay. Okay, all in favor of that motion? Motion carried. Any conflicts of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Showing none. I'm looking for adoption of the minutes of the May 3rd, 2021 Stone Mills regular council meeting. Moved by Wenda, second by Debbie. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. We have a delegation tonight, delegation from Carolyn St. Clair regarding the proposed initiative of a skateboard park in Tamworth.
Your Worship, the treasurer is just going to give access to Ms. Sinclair through the delegation at this point.
Sounds good. Do you want Carolyn? Are you with us, Carolyn, now? Not yet.
I see her, Eric, but I can't hear her. I think they're
Yeah, I can
trying
see
to
her too, and,
communicate.
I'm trying to see if she has any voice. But
I think she is speaking, but it's muffled.
Carolyn, can you hear us?
Carolyn, I've sent you a private message to tell you how to get your microphone up.
I don't think we're having any luck here.
Probably just hasn't found the button for have the audio portion.
Oh, switching laptops.
Carolyn, if you unplug your headphones, you should be able to hear, and we should be able to hear you.
You hear us yet, Carolyn?
Do we have a contact phone number?
I just called her Doug, but I just got her answering machine.
John's calling back.
Your worship, should we proceed until which time we can get a resolution from them?
Sorry, what was that, Brian? Ian?
Should we proceed to the next agenda item until we get their tech difficulties figured out?
Yeah, I think we might just well move on here and then, but they can get something go. John's on the phone here. We'll just give John a half a second here.
Okay.
Give me luck, John.
Yeah, well, they'll switch devices and try to get back in touch. So I just told her to work it out with Christina, and when they're ready, I guess they or Christina
Okay.
will let us know.
Okay, so we'll go on to the next item on the council agenda. Okay, so we're gonna go on to Manager Planning Deputy Clerk Sands. 2553 County Road, Camden East, public input. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah.
I think so.
Awesome. I first of all would just like to mention that Mr. Thompson, Public Works Manager, is also joining me as it relates to this overview. And there was some resource staff, James Richmond and Cindy Hike, who also contributed to the work that's before you in this recommendation this evening. So we're all aware of the property 2553 County Road 4 in Camden East, former daycare and post office, which was devastated through the tornado. Further to that, with respect to what may be accommodated on that site through future development or a redevelopment proposal, staff and council's awareness went through a public information gathering session that exceeded a month in time frame and received some very significant input. 43 pieces of written correspondence, several phone calls, meetings, and communications were had by staff as it relates to what they, as members of our community and township, see as being the most applicable and best use for that site. As summarized in the report, the post office postal box service returning to the village of Camden East itself was of high importance for members of the community, not necessarily specific to that parcel, but the current service, postal service that's being accommodated in Newburgh and required to drive to get the mail is somewhat cumbersome in the opinion of our residents, and to their desire to have some sort of location back in the village. To that point, staff are in communications ongoing with Canada Post, and that, I say, is ongoing because it's sporadic. Canada Post is not the most responsive with respect to what their needs, desires, and terms are for a future build. There's been several meetings with Canada Post that have varied from adopting a postal box, sort of post office use in an existing commercial zoned parcel in the village, and how and what approvals would be needed, It's gone so far to have meetings with their architecture firm on setting that up. So there's somewhat, at this stage, there's somewhat of a mixed review from Canada Post's perspective as to where their desire is to establish a post office or boxes within the village, but it is, from staff's understanding, their desires to return to the village. The 0.09 acre corner parcel that we have on the corner of County Road 1 and County Road 4, in staff's opinion, is not the most suitable site for a building or future development. There are most definitely challenges with siting, appropriate parking, septic setback from well setback, sightline issues on the corner itself. And that leads us to the next most populous response from members of the community in establishing a parkette, communal gathering space, and spot for congregation post-COVID in our hamlet. So to that point, municipal staff have gone through the exercise of establishing what could be accommodated on the site that would be in compliance from a design perspective with what we believe the desires and input from members of the public, as well as the county, as it is very key at the intersection of their two major roads. So Exhibit B lays out on tonight's agenda what that layout of the parkette would be, and to, as you can suspect, the expertise of Public Works Manager Thompson, Exhibit A, giving us a cost estimate to detail what that proposal would look like financially. So all of that has been summarized, as well as the 43 written submissions that we received through this process to tonight's meeting. It's been included for your review, and staff recommend to council that we proceed with the construction of a park on the corner of County Road 1 and County Road 4, and the works be completed by municipal staff to ensure that the budget as detailed in Exhibit A are most closely followed. From a timing perspective, I think Mr. Thompson can speak to that, but that's what we have consolidated and before you this evening, and both Mr. Thompson and I are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have some different proposals there. Go ahead, Wenda.
Sorry. At one point in your submissions to council, you talked about the fact that once you got the go-ahead from council to proceed in this direction, that it was going to involve a little bit more public input and a small working group. Is that correct, Jason? Can everybody hear me?
Through
Yep, we
you,
can hear
Your
you.
Worship. Yeah, sorry about that, Councillor Lalonde. I do recall some previous communications at council with respect to establishing that small working group when sort of in the infancy stages, there was discussion as to what may be accommodated on site and how that would be best delivered to our community and members of the public. Truthfully, it hasn't been discussed in some time internally, and I think that it's not included in tonight's recommendation to council from staff's perspective, because in our opinion, the proposal that is been put forth with respect to a somewhat simplified parkette design, in our view, aligns with the members of the community who have shared their input through the process with respect to hitting the high points of what key features they would like included. But most definitely, if there is the desires of council moving forward, that staff do additional sort of public outreach or opportunity for input on the more detailed design aspects of what we have before us, there's not a concern. I just think from a timing perspective and recognizing the workload that's already being borne by municipal staff who would be able to assist in the completion of this project, we wanted to get a recommendation before you that was that showed a build out as opposed to this gravel situation where it currently sits today.
Um, do
Go ahead,
you
Linda.
mind if I, yes,
Go
okay,
ahead.
thank you. So, I loved all the submissions, and in particular, they continue to talk about a library, and in Newburgh, they have the Rogues Hollow Renewal Committee created joined with an international network called Littlefree Libraries. And it's a little, we had a local resident, George Fraser, build a little house about this big as the exact replica of the building that had once been there in the 1850s. We got pictures for him. And so you open a little door and people put books in there. Now, I realize during a pandemic that may not be to everybody's liking, but hopefully by the time this comes to fruition, we'll be beyond that. And so I went down today and I took a bunch of pictures of it, and I looked inside, and it's full of fairly good quality books. And I thought that might appeal or appease, I guess is the right word, the somewhat strong desire for, the locals to still have access to books. The second point, and I think this will be the final one, is someone had mentioned a memorial. So again, Rogues Hollow Renewal Committee, right beside Sherry's work home, installed, I guess you could call it a memorial plaque. I took some pictures of that today too. And it has a little write-up about the village, and then there's some really clever, 1850s photographs of what the village used to look like. And I thought, that's something fairly easy to do and install. It wasn't hugely expensive, either the Littlefree Library or the memorial thing. And if people are going to go there and sit in a gazebo and on benches and admire flowers or whatever, it just gives them that added feature of conversation, if you will. And I don't like the one in Napanee with the stones. It looks beautiful, but nobody sits there. I drive by that twice a day and I rarely see it being used. So I would love to see whatever we do on that corner serve the purpose of gathering people to sit and chat and, share their coffee from McCormick's or whatever. Anyway, sorry, that's all. I just wanted to make sure that that type of conversation is going to feed into the plans.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm just wondering, this gazebo, what size were you thinking about, Jason? I didn't see any thing that said a size.
Through you, it's a great question, Councillor Richmond. We've not necessarily got to the final, spec as build material or costing regarding that. So in terms of whether that gazebo is 14 by 14 or sits 8, 10, 12 people, kind of, I don't have that level of detail really at this stage.
Okay.
We were looking at trying to look to a cost. We had in our budget roughly $10,000 allocated for that structure. But yeah, we would have to do some additional work to give you a direct answer on size.
Okay, very good. I think it looks great. I think with a decent sized gazebo there, it would give people the shade and get out of the weather a bit if there was some. And I think I think it looks good, and I think we should move forward with it. Thank you.
Any other comments from anybody? Go with Doug and then Sherry.
Yeah, I mean, I back in October when we were having meetings in the barn, I suggested that we do a parquet here. And I used, for example, the one in Napanee. Now, the one in Napanee wasn't really set up for people to sit at, and that it was more, I think, set up just to daylight a corner. In this case, the lot being a little deeper in that, I fully envisioned that we would have benches or someplace for people to go and relax and sit on that corner. And the gazebo works well into that too. I still like the idea of capstones, at least as a backdrop along maybe the boundary line and that. I personally think we should try to do it as low as low maintenance as possible so that it can be kept neat and clean and not become an issue that way for it, for the village. The only extra I would think of, and it doesn't have to be decided at this minute, I'm fully in favor of a parquet, is I had thought that possibly we could use the name of the old bank building, historic name, or the historic name of the village possibly on it. You know, the Sauls or somebody that built the village. Or that building actually was, I believe, a mercantile bank, if I'm not sure, but the history of village would tell you. And that could be put up on, you know, Mercantile Park or whatever, just as a recognition of history, that's all. But other than that, I'm in favor of it, and I would like to see us proceed with it. Might need a little bit of tweaking on the design, but that's, people will get, when they get into it, we'll figure that out.
Okay, we'll go Sherry and then John. Go ahead, Sherry.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. I totally understand there's not enough room there to build a post office if we needed to, and I love the parquet idea. But did you say, Jason, that if Canada Post is not successful with a private business, that we would still try to figure something out about the mail? Because I think that was the number one. People are concerned about their mail. We'll still work on that if that comes to that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. We are continuously in communications with Canada Post representatives, and by no means, from their perspective, by no means are they locking themselves into a single location. At this stage, there's multiple options that exist from their perspective, from you know, box perspective to a post office on multiple different sites, and it truthfully, it seems as though we're somewhat great in distance in securing a term and a fee, or you know, a term and a lease agreement and a size of parcel, a parking stall, you know, number of parking spaces, that kind of thing on our parcel. And for that reason, we're happy, and we'll, as staff, absolutely continue working with them to ensure that, as you know, members of the community feel of great importance with respect to bringing that post office / postal service back into the hamlet, and we're here to assist in that. However, we feel that there are other parcels within the hamlet that can suitably be accommodating their needs as opposed to this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you. So that is a major issue, and I hope one way or another there's going to be a post office in Camden East. Just a couple of things. It looks like we're going to approve this parquet idea, and I certainly support that. Assuming we do, let's keep the communication open. I think we got some pretty good feedback from all those comments, and I read them all, that people really appreciated us asking for submissions. Assuming the motion goes through, let's post what our decision is on the Camden East Facebook page and on our Facebook page, and invite further comments on, you know, not any alternative, but we've decided on a parquet. Here's a preliminary design. Maybe people have some good ideas about bench placement or something like that. So keep the communication open. And I guess my other question is, does the insurance money cover this initiative? If so, what balance would remain? If not, what is the total that we still have to put towards possibly a post office building somewhere else? And is there a time limit on that spending? Thank you.
I guess I'm gonna throw a couple words in here. I agree everything with the corner, what we're doing, but are we really in the post office business, the municipality? You know, and that's just my thoughts on it. I mean, you know, we had the building there, the post office was in a rented a peace office, the library did, and I think it was the Lark. They've all moved on, but to me, I agree with everything what we're said here tonight, as far as the lot and everything that got for the people there. But to me, I don't see why we're spending a whole lot of time on looking after the post office. And one reason I say that, I talked to a road superintendent the other day there, and he gave me some figures that they were going to pay and rent. I think, was it Jeff or something, a term? Maybe he can't hear me there, he's on mute. But anyway, it just didn't seem feasible, but like to me, I don't think we're in the post office business. Just my thoughts. But anyway, I'll go back and like I say, I agree with everything else on the corner. Okay, Debbie, and then John, and first Debbie, Doug, and John. Go ahead, Debbie.
I love the idea of the parkette. I think
Okay.
that would be something that would be customer friendly or village friendly. But I think it's very important we keep the visibility of that corner open now. I don't know how we got away without an accident at that poor corner.
Okay, I think Doug, you were next, and then John. If I'm
Yeah,
right
I mean,
or not.
just in regards to the post office, we need to support the community there, Eric, in far as going to supporting them to get a post office location in the village. Hopefully it will be in one of the in the local store, one of the local buildings and that. And I think we need to be supportive, not for the local business, but for the local community, to support those people so they don't have to drive there. You know, that's our support of. If we can't build a building there, that's fine. There's places where we can put boxes elsewhere in the community. But if it's possible to have a small post office like we had in a local building, I think we need to be supportive of that in any way that we possibly can help out. That's all I think we need to do is make sure Canada Post understands that the township is supportive of the community having a post office.
And I agree with 100%, but I don't think the township should have to build a post office for a private company. John, I think you were next.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions about the insurance money and the balance, and if the insurance money can be used for the parkette. I wonder if I could get a response to those questions.
Sorry, I cut you off like you, John.
No, that's all right. I'm just wondering,
Yep.
does the insurance money cover the parkette idea? I suspect not, but if it does, that's fine. And if it doesn't, what is the amount we have, and is there a time limit before we have to spend that on some kind of building? I'm just wondering about the details of the insurance.
I think Brian's on the screen here. Maybe he can help us out.
Well,
Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Deputy Revise. The truth is there is no timeline there. There's no restrictions, etc. We took a buyout for the portion of the cleanup, Deputy Revise. So I believe that number was 704,000 for the building. That money is ours to reinvest as we so choose to do. There's no limitations, but there's also no liability on the part of the insurance provider any longer for that building. So as we had to pay for the cleanup of that property, we also can choose to reinvest on that site or reinvest in another location. So that money is at the discretion of council as far as reinvestment on that site or another site for any purpose. There are no strings attached to that dollar value.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, that's really good to hear, because if we do get a postal location in a private business, and I think we know which one we're talking about, that's a considerable sum of money that we're left with. And I would just like to put it out there right now that affordable housing is a major issue these days with real estate costs going up. And I would just like people to give some thought to the possibility of partnering with the county for maybe a couple of units or a duplex or some kind of affordable housing initiative, because we keep saying that we want to do that and we keep not doing it. So that's just food for thought. Thank you.
Your Worship, may I speak to that matter just quickly?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Deputy Revise, we had a meeting 2 weeks ago, staff manager of development services, Sands, and I with the social services manager of the county. So we have provided them an inventory of properties that the municipality holds and promoted us as a willing partner as part of affordable housing initiatives. And we've made no commitments on the form of what we could do other than to say that we're a willing partner and here's some possible alternatives of, lower, undersized or unique lots that are municipally owned that we would like to support to our council if they would be willing to promote from their council to become a partnership to get some affordable alternatives in our municipality. So that is something that we've relayed to the county and to both you and Reeve Smith, if we can continue with that momentum to let them know that we are a willing partner. I believe that that message has been relayed as well. But we have looked to try to find some alternatives of properties that are municipally owned to try to fast track that development service in our township if there was an appetite from the county.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm looking for a motion to receive the report, but go ahead, Doug, maybe you can finish it up.
Yep, I'll move that we receive, and I'll also move that we proceed with the concept of development of the parkette.
Okay, Sherry, do you have your hand up? Second that? Okay, any more questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Do you want to step back and Carolyn Sinclair, can you hear us now?
Yep. Can you hear us?
Yes, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're going to step back to our delegation, which is 5A, and the delegation from Carolyn Sinclair regarding the proposed initiative of a skateboard park in Tamworth. Okay, Carolyn, we'll let you go ahead with this.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for allowing us to present this idea. My name is Carolyn Sinclair, and this is my son, Loxley. We've started a committee to try and get a skate park here in Tamworth, as I think a lot of people know. The closest skate park that we go to is the one in Napanee, but we really feel that our community could benefit from having one built right here in town. We are a growing community. A lot of people are moving with COVID and such. We have a lot of young families, and there are a lot of active kids within the community. And I've done a lot of programming with the kids at the community center with Alan, and I've run broomball clinics and ball hockey clinics, and I always have a good number of kids showing up to those. And so there seems to be a great need for kids to do something in this area. The ballpark, the park that was put behind the ballpark is great. But for older kids, it's just, that park isn't enough for kids, say like Loxley's age, kind of, he's 15, but like for kids that are kind of 13, 14, 15, they seem to tap out of the programs and there doesn't seem to be a lot for them to do. So I feel if we provided a skate park, it could also be considered a multi-use park. I think kids would gravitate towards this idea. You can use bikes, scooters, rollerblades, skateboards. There's a lot of different rolling devices that you can use on these pads. It would give the kids a safe place to meet up with their friends and be active, which I'm a proponent of. I love seeing kids be active. By providing a skate park, the kids who are currently riding all over town, they're looking for obstacles to jump and that sort of stuff. So if we provided a skate park, this would alleviate all the kids scooting and skateboarding around town. Currently, we have a spot that we think would be a perfect location. We're thinking of the southwest corner at the soccer field. There's like a grassy opening there that would give us ample space. And we think it would be a great by the soccer field because the soccer field already has a refill station. The porta potties are in place. The parking lot's there and there's tons of space. So we were hoping with the council's support, if this was in favor, that we could possibly talk about the land being granted to our initiative and being donated, if that was a possibility. So that would be our first step. We feel this location would be accessible and because of its visibility from the road. So, because it has the parking lot and you'd be able to see it right from County Road 4, it would be easy for people to find it. We like this spot because it's not tucked away. Some towns, when you go to use their skate parks are tucked away behind recreation centers. And I don't think that's a good idea. I think they should be visible from the road so that you can always see kids there and see what they're doing. And parents could drive by and know that their kids are being safe and not doing things they shouldn't be doing. So after getting a approval and the location approved, the next step would be a geotechnical report. So the geotechnical report would be the hiring of an engineer from a tech company to come and take soil samples. They would drill a bunch of holes in the location that was chosen, and they would take soil samples, and with those soil samples they would be able to detect what the water table underneath the ground was like. And this is very important because if you're going to build a big concrete pad, you need to make sure obviously that the ground underneath is suitable for this type of park. So it would also determine the cost of the park because once the geotechnical report was finished and the results would come in, it would let you know if like what kind of excavating, what kind of grading and backfilling, and how much of that you would need in order to level off the ground before you pour the pad. So I've spoken with a guy from a Toronto company. His name is Rob Pointer. He builds skate parks all over Ontario. He's built parks in Halliburton, Tobermory, Frankfurt, Markham, Ontario. So he's built a lot of them, and he's got a small company, and his focus is to get as many skate parks in the rural communities as he can, because he's an avid skateboarder himself, and he has a team that he does the building with, and he's worked with townships all over that have worked in conjunction with him to help build the skate park. His company is called Trinity Skate Park Solutions. And he's got a webpage that has his mission statement and everything. So an example of a skate park that I've been discussing with him that we would like to maybe compare ours to would be the one that he did in Tobermory. The skate park in Tobermory was around 2,200 to 2,500 square feet. The township in Tobermory was involved in that project by excavating, by doing the excavating, and they built it up with A gravel, and they were able to compact it to grass level to get it ready for the concrete pour. So this was done to make the skate budget go further, as they had access to this gravel. And other ways to minimize costs are to obviously use local concrete companies and local stores that would sell the lumber and steel. So now we come to the costs, and it's not a cheap endeavor. If we're looking at a poured pad around 2,500 square feet, this would be around $100,000, give or take. So I know this number seems high, but I believe that this is absolutely doable if we take the right approach. So for some of the funding approaches that I've already reached out to, I've reached out to the Lennox and Addington Community Foundation. I'm waiting to hear back from the gentleman who runs that. And Loxie and I have also put a video in at the McDougall Insurance Family Fund campaign to try and win some money. They're giving up to $5,000 for first place, $3,000 for second, and $2,000 for third place. And so they want to see a community project be built or be put to use. And those that will open to the public May 22nd. And I'm going to send out reminders to people via Facebook and Instagram to try and get as many votes as we can, so we have better chance at winning this $5,000. We've also started a GoFundMe account, which is currently ongoing right now. And I've an email out to Rob Plumley from the Lennox and Addington Economic Development Department, just to see if there's any money through the activation fund that might be able to grant money as well to community projects. So it's possible to have sponsorship also from larger companies in exchange for advertising opportunities. I haven't had a chance to look into this too much, but if it was to get to that point, I would look into getting some sponsorship if possible. And we could also incorporate a phase system where we build the park in phases according to how much funding we have at the time or how much money we've raised. So now for the insurance and upkeep, it doesn't take a lot of upkeep. In Napanee, I was speaking with Chris Brown from the Township. He believes that they have liability insurance through the Township, and there's signs up at the park in Napanee that say use at own risk. They do the upkeep by mowing, and they do garbage disposal, and the structure itself has never been an issue. The only thing they've had to do was paint over some inappropriate graffiti that some kids have painted onto the concrete. Upkeep is pretty much minimal, as these are made of concrete and can last up to 30 years. So, and the company that I spoke about earlier, he also can do insurance through his company, but that would also add to the costs of the entire endeavor. So, and also in Napanee, when their skate park was built, they were very, very fortunate to have a concrete company come in and donate all the concrete to their cause. Yeah. And they, yeah, you probably know. And I know that Councillor Lalonde's son had something to do with the building of that park. So they were very lucky, because that's a huge sponsorship from a concrete company. But anyways, we're getting a lot of support just from the community. It's been really positive, and I'm feeling that you know, with a positive attitude and some support, that we can make this happen. We're really hoping that we can kickstart it by winning this $5,000 from the McDougall Family Fund campaign. And yeah, we're hoping that we can work in conjunction with the Stone Mills Township if this were to pass. In conclusion, I guess what we're looking for from the township would be possible donation of land if the approval went through, possible involvement with the excavation of the land and backfill, because there might be some access to gravel through the township. And if approved, could the township act as a conduit for any type of funding or grant that was accepted in helping with our initiative? So we're not a registered charity. And so I was going to ask if it would be possible to hold money in trust through the township, or if the township could act as a conduit. So I think that's about all I have. I hope that I've made my points clear, and and that we have support from the township for this initiative. We're very excited to see something happen. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. And I'm going to throw it up to the council here if there's any comments. Go ahead, John.
Yes, thanks, Eric. It's great to see a community initiative like this. I have had some conversations with Carolyn and Loxley. And I agree that there's a certain age group of kids in a lot of communities. We seem to have programs for younger kids and adults, but this is a group that could use some recreational opportunity. What I'm wondering, and I certainly support the idea, is I'm not exactly sure where that land is, and I guess I'd like to hear from Jake or Jeff if they're familiar with the spot Carolyn's talking about, and if they see any problem with using a spot for that. And I also think we don't have to donate the land in terms of giving it to your group, Carolyn. We can just make that part of our recreation facility if we go ahead with this. So I guess that would be my first question, would be just if Jake or Jeff are familiar with the spot, and if they think it would be suitable for this type of thing.
Anybody want to answer that, Jake? Or
Your worship, if I
Go
may,
ahead. Yep.
just while Jake's getting here, I don't want to kind of rain on the parade, so to speak, of the thing, but this is also one of the locations that we've talked to the county about possible affordable housing on the large parcel of property that's currently used for recreational purposes. So that was one of the properties that the municipality already owned that we considered may be a viable option for some housing development, given its close proximity to the recreational fields as well as the fire. So certainly if we did one or the other of those, it would certainly limit other potential opportunity on that specific property, just given the access to and from the fire and the recreation station. My assumption was, if I may just confirm, it was the southwestern portion, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Right off the parking lot there.
Yeah, so to the right, so to speak, of the parking lot, that's the area that specifically we were talking. Actually, to the east of it, we actually have determined that it's not municipally owned, so it's actually part of the parcel to the east. So I'll digress and let CBO Detler kind of speak to the logistics of doing anything from the municipality, but I just wanted to make sure that the council was aware that affordable housing alternative was also pitched on that same parcel of property.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, no, yeah, we own all the way kind of back, like the parking lot all the way south to the old railroad tracks there. I don't know if you guys are familiar with there, but there's the old railroad tracks are there, and that's where our property ends. We wouldn't probably have to do a lot of hydrogeological studies to find the water table. Quinny Conservation, if you called them tomorrow, they could tell you how many feet below the surface the water table was, because they have a probe in the well right there. And I know that Reeve Smith has talked about potentially building a helipad there at one point. So there's been a lot of people that have had a lot of plans with that area. So anyways, but definitely we do own a large chunk of land around the soccer field there, yes.
With this project, Karen, would you need lights?
Lights?
Yeah, for night.
No.
It would be.
Maybe not as a first thing, but maybe as we go on, we could add that.
It's not something that we would incorporate at the very beginning just for cost reasons, but maybe something we could phase in at a later time.
Because I don't think there's, I know the area, I don't think there's any lights there. I mean, I just didn't know what your plan was for that. Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Anybody else have something to say? Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I mean, rather than trying to solve it and build it here tonight, when we first heard of it, I would just like to say that, hey, if we could help with land or something, I think we would. Let's try not find the spot tonight. We got another day to find the spot, sort of situation. Let's not turn it down on that case just because that spot may have some other uses. I think we've received it. We need a lot more information. We need to look for spots, but I think we need to keep the communication flowing.
Are you making that a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Second by Kevin.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Go ahead, John.
Okay, I like that, Doug. So is your motion in effect to accept in principle or something to that effect that we support the concept? If we can find an appropriate spot, we'll work with Carolyn and her group to facilitate the project in any way we can.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I mean, what we've heard here tonight is a conceptual idea, and I can see us digressing. Oh, we want this spot. No, we haven't got this spot. Let's just agree that if we can find a suitable spot, that we will work with Carolyn on that. I agreed with your earlier comments. We wouldn't donate the land. We would allow use of the land, and probably for insurance purposes, that would be best anyways, to keep it in our own name, because then our umbrella insurance policy would cover liability in that. So I'm just trying to say, let's not stop the flow tonight just because we can't agree on a spot tonight. We got time tomorrow to look for a spot. Let's agree to it in principle that we will continue the conversation.
Okay, fair enough, everybody. Everybody in favor of that motion? Perfect. Thanks. Karen, we'll be in touch, and you can be in touch with our office, and then we'll see what we can do with this.
Okay, thank you so much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, let's go back to manager plan and deputy clerk Sands, and the second was interim control bylaw extension 12 months cannabis production and cultivation. Okay, who wants to touch this? You gonna do this, Jason, or is Brian?
I can start, your worship, and CAO Brooks can interject absolutely as he sees air in what I speak to or what I miss. As many of you are aware, we currently do have an interim control bylaw in effect as it relates to cannabis production growth within the entirety of our municipality. So it spans the fullness of the municipality. And one of the mechanisms, or as we are aware, the Planning Act allows a 1-year enactment of an interim control bylaw with the potential of an expansion for up to 12 months to allow for the completion of the background study and the land use compatibility components that go into understanding the best ways to regulate the use in the future, or future regulate the separation distances, et cetera. Now, as outlined in this staff update report, speaking to the extension of the in effect interim control bylaw, staff have highlighted a few points that are of specific note, and the first of which I'll speak to, as in my opinion, it's the greatest component that would necessitate such an extension. The Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, formerly Ministry of Environment, in the early 1990s, established what are called the D-series guidelines. And many of you will be aware of the D5 guidelines that are applicable to well water regulation within the province. But as it relates to industrial facilities and industrial separation distances, the ministry enacted a D6 series guidelines, and they're essentially littered in every planning document within the province, from an official plan, from a zoning bylaw, from a site plan control perspective. They have separation distances that many of you will be familiar with, 500 meters from a sensitive land use, i.e. a residential land use, to a quarry, 150 meters from a class 3 industrial land use to a sensitive land use like a residence. Why I mention this is it's the foundation to our industrial use and how close we can construct sensitive land uses to those. And this is completely being overhauled by the ministry as we speak. There's currently a 60-day comment period that's being advertised by the ministry for input from us planners at the municipal level as to what we would like, updated, harmonized, brought to our attention. So, and as you're aware, regulating a cannabis grow operation or a cannabis production facility in many municipalities is considered an industrial land use. And from a planning perspective, I think can very adequately be defended as an industrial land use. So thereby it falls within this set of criteria. So to this first point, the conclusion of a background study speaking to the appropriateness of separation distances, et cetera, in advance of having the ministry's input or guidance on this set of criteria that is approximately 30 years dated now, in my mind would be completed in advance. It to me would necessitate a future update should we adopt a form of separation distance that was then superseded by the ministry. So for this reason, the timing, which I hope will align with the ministry issuing their recommendation for the newer set of criteria, will allow for municipalities such as ours to implement appropriate separation distances through this. Secondly, as many of you are aware, there's a 5-year update with respect to the Cannabis Act that Health Canada is undertaking that's not yet completed, and it will not be completed in our term. But it's CAO Brooks and I are on many pieces of correspondence and communications at the municipal level that are going to and from Health Canada with respect to the ways in which the regulations have been unfolding in other municipalities. And we're finding that very helpful as it relates to how best to regulate within our jurisdiction. Again, some of the other points within the report, I don't want to bore you, also speak to that ongoing communications. All that being said, staff, along with our legal counsel, Mr. Fleming, have reviewed what we have currently in effect, the absence thereof, as well as the land use planning changes that we see coming through from the ministry level as to constituting a great example or opportunity as to why advancing and concluding now from a policy update would be naive, and an extension of up to 1 year in accordance with the Planning Act would be appropriate to allow for the completion of the background study with the best ways in which to regulate the use within our jurisdiction as the most appropriate action forward. I do want to mention that the recommendation and the inclusion of what staff have presented tonight speak to up to 1 year, with the hope that that the background study and the ministry's input work could be completed in advance of 12 months. However, it should be noted that July 13th, 2022 is the final day that we may have until the expiration of this interim control bylaw. So should it be adopted, should it be completed in 6 month time frame, staff fully anticipate and it's our desire to return to council with the way we want to regulate the use in our municipality, and bring that forward through adoption of policy change, as opposed to waiting an additional 6 months in that example, just because the wording of the motion of tonight would be up to. So if that's not clear, I'm happy to answer any questions. And as I mentioned, CAO Brooks is as well available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for anybody? Go ahead, Wenda. We can't hear you, Wenda.
Sorry. This is for Jason. You mentioned the 5-year update cannabis regs, Health Canada. Where are they in that update? Where are they?
Through you, Brian, will jump in. I believe they're about 2 years in, or midway, 2.5. But Brian was on the most recent communication with Health Canada. Can you clarify that, Brian?
I can. So there's thank you, Worship, and Deputy Clerk. We have a working group that's been created through AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, that are sending in correspondence to communicate with Health Canada as they prepare for their 5-year review. So what municipalities are doing is attempting to provide the hardships or the difficulties with the current licensing parameters, i.e. The confusion surrounding licensing and the number of plants, the regulations of such, in the sense of how many properties can be growing, and who can grow on which properties. There's a number of corresponding topics that are being passed from municipalities just based on their experience and their, I guess, lack of cohesiveness inside of communities, that's being relayed from AMO through Health Canada in an effort to get that brought into the communication and the approval process as part of the legalization and the cultivation and production of cannabis. My understanding is that they're hoping to have this consultation done by end of year, so that Health Canada can make their recommendations as part of their renewal to Federal Canada, to try to make a more seamless process that has municipal interests at least considered, so that the municipalities are not left trying to enforce a regulation that's federally regulated, similar to the framework that we have today.
Anybody else have any questions? There is none. We have, do you have something, John?
Yes, thank you. I'm just wondering, given the pace at which ministries tend to run, hearing that Health Canada by the end of the year might have something to discuss doesn't give me a lot of confidence that by the time our extended interim control bylaw runs out in July of 22, that we should have our own sort of policies in place sometime this winter, in case we have to go ahead without anything definitive from the ministries. I mean, you know what it's like in ministries. They say tomorrow, they mean next month. And the other thing I think we should keep in mind, and again, we'll probably hear about this from the provincial level and the federal level, is we're talking right now about the sort of industrial scale of undertaking. There are a fair number of people who grow their own plants, have a license to grow their own plants beyond the 4 plant limit for recreation, to grow them for medical use. If we come up with a single number in terms of a separation distance that's appropriate for a large operation of many hundreds or thousands of plants, obviously that's going to be onerous for people who have a medical condition and just live next door to somebody else. So we're going to have to keep that in mind, and that's going to be tricky, because 10 or 15 pot plants, when they're flowering, are pretty skunky. And if you're downwind only 70 or 80 feet away, there's going to be conflict. So the devil might be in the details on this whole thing. And the other thing for Jason, you say that there is justification for treating it as an industrial activity, in which case it would require rezoning. I can see that for the indoor grow type operation, but what about the outdoor? Would they not have a good argument that it's agricultural if it's just being field grown?
Through your worship, just to Deputy Reeve Wise's comments, I'd first like to mention, I wholeheartedly, in my experience, understand what you're saying and the tardiness of some of the actions of the ministry. And my hope through this process is, though, should we extend within the 1 year period, there may not be full adoption of a new quote unquote D series guideline for industrial separation. But my hope is that there's at least a draft released that gives consideration to that use, or that, you know, cannabis production facility in what that means, and what that looks like. Outdoor growing, indoor growing, production facility was never contemplated in the 1990s through the D6 series document. So my hope for at least, you know, sort of our consideration at municipal level, through bringing in something in effect prior to July 2022, is we've got their high level thoughts towards the use. To your second point about what consideration from land use may be given, industrial versus agricultural, absolutely. That is the fundamental question that planners have been struggling with since the legalization of the product. And in Stone Mills specifically, we were outdoor growing of plants was considered an agricultural use and treated as to be considered permitted, in the lack of definitions prior to the freeze with the enactment of an interim control bylaw. But it was considered to be an agricultural use and required to comply with the agricultural use setbacks and zoning requirements within our rural zones. So there must be, in future, with coming out of this land use compatibility study, a differentiation of outdoor growing versus indoor growing. And to your point, Deputy Wise, about what that tipping point may be of, you know, how we regulate odor, there's going to have to be a different definition versus indoor, outdoor, and also how and what constitutes an agricultural use, versus what constitutes an industrial use. So all that sort of discussion and differentiation is what I envision being summarized and reviewed through the land use compatibility study that's being worked on and will be completed as part of the interim control bylaw.
Thank you.
Brian, do you have something to finish off here?
Your worship, just quickly to that point, Deputy Reeve Wise, I think some of the difficulty is trying to get that definition and determination from personal use to industrial or agriculture use. What's confusing this whole situation is when physicians sign a certificate for personal use of 4,000 plants per year. That's part of what AMO is trying to lobby to Health Canada to regulate more effectively and to ensure that what is actually being licensed is reasonable to personal use versus that of which could be of a larger use. The analogy that's been used a little bit at that table is somebody that plants, 6 acres of corn and calls it for personal use is doing it for a different purpose rather than that of what's actually reasonable for a homegrown garden. So that's the analogy that's been floating around in that table, and trying to get some reasonableness applied to personal use and some of the large applications that are falling under personal use licenses, which are clearly exceeding what any human could consume in an annual license. So that's all of the framework that's trying to be pulled together. But unfortunately, without some sort of move by Health Canada or legislative authorities, it's very difficult for the municipality to come back. The concern that the manager of development services and I have is that if we did not have an interim control bylaw and allow some further directive prior to implementing it, we would implement a process like there's site plan control for every property that intends to grow, which is onerous on any individual that had a small amount, but without proper direction, it's very difficult for us to give a blanket approval or to lay some parameters, not knowing, just like we have with zoning, it has to be so much distance, et cetera, from sidelines. We don't know every circumstance. So a site plan control would require every application to be reviewed on its own. And I think that's actually more counterproductive than the recreational, for plant user at this point anyway. So that's why we're looking at doing an interim control to continue that and allow for some more directive and planning decision prior for us to implementing a policy that would cover cannabis cultivation.
Okay, with that being said, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Okay, moved by John, second there by Wenda. Any more questions, comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Okay, we'll go to Treasurer Busha, paid sick leave report. Christina, yep, go ahead, Dan.
So the report you have in front of you is just for information purposes of how we use our current personal leave / sick leave policy. And I've given you the last 4 years worth of values that have been paid out. In most cases, employees aren't receiving a full 40 hours paid out. They're usually around 10 to 20. It's usually about 4 or 5 that don't actually use it.
Okay, any questions or comments for Christina? Okay, so I guess we're looking for a motion to receive the report. Moved by Kevin, second by Sherry. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you, Christina. Stone Mills accounts payable. Any questions for Christina? For Christian, you have anything to add?
Nope.
No? Any questions for Christina? Can I have a motion to pay the bills? Moved by Debbie, second by Kevin. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Okay, CO clerk, CAO's recommendation for police service attachment board, June 7th deadline. Brian, do you want to? We worked on this, but you might better do the report.
Okay, Richard, I'll try to summarize the report without looking at it. The new framework that we anticipated coming down as far as a mandatory detachment board is upon us. They're essentially seeking comment from impacted municipalities as they attempt to create the framework for detachment boards. You'll see in the report today that the recommendation from the 4 county CAOs is that we would have a Lennox and Addington board detachment. That board detachment would be comprised of all heads of council unless they delegated another representative if they chose not to sit in that position. I think the comment has been that always the Reeve has held that seat, and to which time, if they wish not to, they could ask for another council member to be elected at the lower tier. The framework is somewhat similar to what we envisioned would happen, is where all council members, we have 1 council member from each lower tier municipality of 4. We would have a civilian representation in the north, civilian in the south. So 1 between Addington Highlands and ourselves, 1 between Loyalist and Napanee, to make up a board of 6. And Napanee's executive assistant has agreed to partake and complete the secretary treasurer duties of that board. The expectation is that all municipalities involved would pay the costs associated with their member. If that member was from the north and they were from Stone Mills, then we would also compensate the honorarium that's decided by the board for that person. Likewise, if it was in Addington Highlands, they would do their own as well. So the plan is to meet 4 times per year, similar to the previous police services board. And all the detachment correspondence would then flow back to councils through the representative, as well as if there's any requests from the detachment commander, they would still have the ability to present to council. What we're looking for is endorsement from council to this framework, so that we can ensure that we send this off to the ministry for consideration as the compilation of the new board comes, which the deadline is June 7th. So it was essentially either tonight or risk the possibility of not getting this before council before the deadline. If anybody has any questions, sorry, your worship.
Go ahead. Any questions for Brian? Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, Brian. So if I understand it right, we get one representative from the community between the two different areas, North Front or North Hastings and Stone Mills. You would
That's
have
correct.
one unit. How would that person be? And that's just a civilian person. And how would you pick that person, or was there any thought to that?
Yeah, so what the process typically is the four heads of council would essentially be the four members put to the board, and then they would have a call out to interested individuals to partake on that in that civilian role. Then normally the established members of the committee, i.e. the four heads of council and the executive assistant, would take those into consideration, and either, there's been some, expressions of interest letters, there's resumes, there may even be some, interview types discussion to determine. But my experience has been that usually they take a look at the candidates and they see the history, and they usually look to add somebody to the committee based on past qualifications and experience in the field or their interest. And that's how they've been appointed to the board, and that's how I anticipate they would be here as well.
Go ahead, Kevin.
If I could, Reeve Smith. Brian, why not have one from each unit? I guess was my question as I was reading it. I'm thinking that's only two more people throughout the four things, right? And I just wondered why not one from each area, seeing how we are quite spread apart and different issues maybe. And I just wondered why they wouldn't have two.
I think the discussion about that was just the committee size, Councillor Richmond, trying to manage a group of 9 versus 7. 7 is already deemed to be, a large committee, so to speak. So it was actually trying to justify the 7 versus considering going any higher than that. It's not an impossibility, but it was just seen as 7 is kind of a high manageable for a board, so to speak. And so that was the number that was kind of seen as the max alternative.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so can we do you have something, Wanda?
Yes, Brian. So this package looks really good. I don't see any negatives in here, and I wonder if you have identified any negatives in this package.
The negatives inside this package is that if you recall, there's a community safety well-being plan that municipalities are working on, and we had agreed on some framework that would include Deseronto and Tynanega Township. Some of the negatives to that is that it's some rejigging of geographic nature, as the original detachment board, which is covered by LNA, included Tynanega and Deseronto. So it may include some impact to that community safety well-being plan. However, we're envisioning a system where Hastings County, resources as far as social services and those other sources that will be included in that well-being plan will just be interchanged for those of LNA County. So we expect that they'll still participate, but there is a chance that they choose to do their own thing, and we may have a greater portion of a budget on the community safety well-being plan, but nothing has been confirmed in that nature yet. So in that case, we paid $12,000, Councillor Lalande, of a total $80,000 budget. I think Tynanega was a very similar number and Deseronto less. So worst case scenarios, there could be an additional, say, $20,000 to be shared amongst the 4 municipalities on a per capita basis towards that budget. But the project could be sizably smaller, not having to cover 6 municipalities rather than just 4. That's literally it. We're very comfortable that we forecasted this coming down. That hence the reason we opted into a Section 10 police contract. So this is almost as we forecasted. The real detriment is in, say, the town of Greater Napanee. When they opted out, they lost the access to some of the grants that they were receiving for other projects, but we weren't getting those, so it's not impacting us to the same amount.
Thank you.
Okay, with that being said, we have a recommendation in front of us. I'm looking for a mover. Moved by Sherry, second by Debbie. Any more questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, we'll go to Public Works Manager Thompson, RFQ, the 2021 01 results of 1 3/4 ton and a 4x4 and 1/2 ton 4x4. You want to make a report on that? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. You have a report in front of you. Recommendation to purchase a 3/4 ton from Petrie Ford and the second lowest bid of Toyota. Reason being, it's $3,000 difference. Reason being is availability of any trucks. So, any questions on that?
Any questions for, go ahead, Kevin, and then Doug, or sorry, and John.
Yeah, Jeff, my only question was why, and I think you may have just answered it, but why you can buy a 3/4 ton for less than you can buy a 1/2 ton Tundra? Why not get 2 3/4 tons? But did you answer my question already, I guess?
Yeah, the availability on any trucks, Ford trucks, it seems, any trucks actually. Any of the dealers we talked to, we sent it out to 7 dealers. It's 24 months, 12 to 24 months delivery. They can't even give us an answer. So Toyota, they could deliver in July, and we're going to have to wait on the 3/4 ton.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, what's the wait time? I mean, would it be worth it to get the 1 3/4 ton and then wait, Jeff? And get, like, to me, it just, a 3/4 ton truck's a lot better for our uses, I would think.
So-
and I'm thinking if we could wait a few months and hold out, get the one and then wait for the other one. But I don't know the numbers exactly time-wise, so.
So it's the 1/2 ton that's available July 1st, the Toyota. The other ones are 12 to 24 months. They can't even give us a date.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, John, did you have something?
Yeah, just a general question, Jeff. Did you get any explanation or theories from any of these dealers what the problem is with truck supply? I know my son in Edmonton's just been trying to buy a low mileage used truck, and there's nothing. One of the salesmen there said a lot of American buyers have just been snapping up pickup trucks for some reason. Any thoughts?
Shortage in the circuit boards for the Ford. Toyota, they had 2 years of stock of any of the electronics. So that's why they're still able to meet delivery dates.
So we can't get any vintage like 60s pickups that don't need that crap?
Good one.
Any other questions?
Go from electric to a vintage. That's awesome.
Okay, we have a recommendation in front of us. It's moved by Doug, second by Sherry.
No.
You have something? You have a question, Doug?
Yeah, I did have a question.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, it's my understanding here that Jeff was put out a tender because he needs vehicles. And if I'm correct, I believe I am, that one of the vehicles at least he's replacing is extremely high mileage and not capable of being kept on the road. I mean, you have to ask the question, how do you stretch a vehicle that's got 500,000 or 600,000 miles or kilometers on it already? I'm a great proponent of tendering and getting the best deal, but is this a chance when we should be picking up the phone and seeing if there is something somewhere? I mean, Jeff needs vehicles. He can't wait 24 months. That's ridiculous.
Go ahead, Jeff.
And that's a possibility. It's actually, Brian, go ahead. It's part of the procurement.
Yeah, sorry, and not to cut off Jeff, but this is a discussion that we've had internally. We're quite confident from a buying power perspective that the Toyota has maintained competitiveness with the F-150. In past competitions, Toyota has been seen as a more superior, long-standing mileage vehicle. It's never been proven because quite honestly, they've never been in the game, so to speak. They've been $20,000 higher than Fords and Chev. But now that the supply is not available, I think from a perspective from our mechanics feedback, they're quite happy with the possibility of a Tundra in the sense of trying to determine whether there's fleet benefits, and then we could have that information in the future, given the small distance. But I think the other option that we looked at was if we approved the Tundra and then granted a budgetary allotment to the public works manager, giving him the ability to buy if he's able to locate an F-250, which is the desired vehicle that we're looking at. that may fill, and we attempted to go to competition, we attempted to go to market, and supply has made that, we've exhausted that effort, and council would be well within their right to bypass that policy by motion and grant our public works manager the ability to purchase if he's able to secure a vehicle with a budget that has been addressed by council. So that is something that's of consideration and something we had discussions of, but I think, Mr. Thompson will tell you that he's not confident that that's going to happen and that we're going to find an F-250 that we'll be able to secure.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, and okay, so I'm fully in favor of buying the Tundra. That's available to us now at a reasonable time period, so I don't have an issue of paying the extra couple thousand. They're the next highest bidder. But before I commit to a 2-year wait for a half ton, I'd at least like to see us pick up the phone call and see if there is something available on a lot someplace that would comparably fit. I mean, take 2 weeks and do it before you commit to a 2-year time frame. It's not like we're going to miss out on anything at the 2-year wait period.
Okay, any other questions? We have a motion in front of us for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Doug, second.
I'll move on the Toyota, yep.
Yep, second by Wenda. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. 2020 annual landfill monitoring report. Back to you, Mr. Thompson.
So I hope you had a chance to read the reports. They were kind of lengthy for the 3 landfills. I had Pinch and summarize the report just to identify some of the key points and lifespan or expected lifespan left at the 3 landfills. Did anyone have any questions on those?
Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Jeff, I didn't read every single word on every single monitoring well, but from the comments throughout the reports, there don't seem to be any water quality issues of any significance, unless I missed something. But the lifespans are interesting. Moscow is 78 years, Camden East is 16, and Sheffield is 22. Did they do an extrapolation of what happens in 22 years when both Camden East and Sheffield are closed, then everything goes to Moscow, what the actual lifespan of Moscow would be once the other 2 are closed?
No, that would be the current area, and they every 3 to 4 years they do a topographical. I think this last one they did with a drone and take all the elevations and figure out the quantity based on the cover material and the waste that's going into the site, and then it calculates how many years are left in that area.
And it's really guesswork, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, I'm not sure. I know at the landfill when it gets busy, sometimes they don't ask how many bags of garbage I've got, and that's not blaming anyone. I know what it's like when there's a big lineup there. But when I saw 16 years for Camden East, we get these reports every year, and for a while there, it seemed like a long way off. 16 years now doesn't seem like such a great distance off. I won't be here, but some of the younger members of council and staff will be, most likely. And we put money away through the bag sales and so on for closure costs. It's hardly urgent, but at least it's on the horizon that we start maybe thinking about what happens when I'm sure you have, Jeff, what happens when the Camden landfill site closes, what impact that will have on waste being diverted to the other 2, then Sheffield closes. So at some point in the next year or so, I'd like to see just a discussion paper maybe from you as to what scenarios would look like. That's all. It's not even a motion.
Yeah, well, that's no problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, Jeff, I thought Camden was like 30 years or 35 years, the last report we had. And 16 seems like it's really jumped up there. Am I wrong in what I'm thinking, or was I thinking of something else? But I thought it was like in the 30-year area.
That's right. I think about 5 years ago, it might have been around the 25, 30 year, but and it depends on the fill material we have placed there too. So if we have a larger stockpile of fill, they calculate that into the area. So
this 16 years could change some over
Exactly.
the next years too.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, landfills are subjective to the information that they get. First of all, Camden East, that landfill, I see they listed as being open in the early 80s, but in actual fact, it was opened in the late 70s or 60s. When I lived in Camden East in 1970, it was open then. So anyways, I can remember when they were telling us that it was imminent that they were going to close Camden East. Okay, so they changed. A few years ago, Sheffield only had 4 years left in it, Jeff, and now we got a better number. So it depends on how the site is monitored. And one of the things that really helps the sites is the fact that you can mine them. And Camden East has been mined a couple of times over the years, which means that you dig the cell out and reuse the fill and replace the garbage. So anyways, those numbers, I wouldn't get excited that it's going to be 100% accurate tomorrow. But when we set up the bag tags, that process was for closure costs. And when we opened the expansion on Moscow, we did discuss at that time that it would be available to take the overflow from the whole municipality. And we even talked about it when Sheffield was in danger of being closed. So a report, I think, would be a good idea, but we're in good shape compared to a lot of our neighbors who have to truck it all the way.
Anything else? Go ahead, Wenda.
Just quickly, one thing. I know some municipalities have an opportunity for contributing to municipal compost. And I'm wondering if there's any thought that perhaps we could a little bit minimize what's going into landfill and plastic bags and have an area for composting. People that either choose not to do it at home, but would be happy to, have that opportunity to contribute at a landfill where, and I don't know if we're set up or could be set up for that, but it's just a thought. And people could even come and take some of the compost for their gardens.
So we have looked at that before, and you need the quantity to aerate the compost. So it's a change in your certificate of approval with MOE, and to have the quantity and have to aerate it and turn it every 24 hours, I believe. It just wasn't, we didn't have the volumes. So there was enough people that were composting at home or rural area that we didn't feel we'd have the volumes to take that on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kevin.
Yeah, just Jeff, have a look at the key maps that they put out. They were talking about, or I thought anyway, as I was perusing through it, I did not read 168 pages of it by any stretch. But the key maps on it, they were talking, I thought they were talking about the Moscow dump, and they had it over on the key map showed it on County Road 4. So whether they just made it up wrong or whatever, it looked wrong to me anyway.
They had one attachment that was named the same, but it was actually, so they must not have changed it all the way through.
Okay. I just thought I'd point it out because I did notice that when I was going through it, that it looked like it was different.
Okay, nothing else. I'd like a motion to receive the report. Moved by Doug, second by John. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Items for information, a copy of the Quinte Conservation meeting. Anybody vote of that or anything you want to fill us in on, John? No? Okay.
No, it's just we didn't have a meeting in April, Eric. Otherwise, we would have had the March minutes to show you, but the March minutes have to be approved at our upcoming May meeting. So these minutes are pretty old.
Okay, so I have a motion to receive the Moved by Kevin, second by Sherry. All in favor? Carried. Any new business statements from members? None, okay. Okay, Brian, do I finish this meeting out before we announce the closed session?
Yes, your worship, and then you'll complete the confirming bylaw and the motion to adjourn as part of the closed session Zoom meeting.
Okay. So can I have a motion for the confirming bylaw? Moved by Debbie, second by Kevin. All in favor? Oh, motion to adjourn. Linda, Sherry, all in favor? Great. Okay, so we're gonna